Everyone ready to go? Well, firstly, can I just say good morning and thank you for coming along today. For far too long, New Zealand has been held back by tangles of red and green tape, making it difficult, making it time-consuming and ridiculously expensive to build the major projects that our country so desperately needs to get its mojo back. We all see the problems that this has caused. We need more renewable power so that we can meet our climate targets, but consenting a new wind farm can take years. We all need certainly to build more houses urgently, but instead thousands of Kiwis are left desperately trying to find a home while resource consents for new housing developments are painfully slow and difficult to get. We know that people are stuck in traffic while the consenting process for a new road inches along even more slowly than they're able to drive. New Zealand has become an obstruction economy, as I've said so many times before, and I'm not, and I know our government is not prepared to let New Zealand remain stuck in the slow lane. We want more roads, we want more wind farms, we want more homes, more solar, more geothermal, more mines, more commerce and more opportunity for New Zealanders to get building and to get ahead under their own steam. So this morning we're announcing our new fast-track consenting one-stop shop regime. This new consenting regime means we'll be able to get big projects built much faster and much more cost effectively. Our new fast-track regime will lift New Zealand's living standards, it will lift productivity and it will grow our economy, all while still protecting treaty settlements and our environment. This regime is an important part of our coalition agreement with New Zealand First, and this afternoon when the bill is introduced into Parliament, it will be another of our first 100-day commitments achieved. I just want to congratulate in particular both Chris Bishop and Shane Jones, who have done an incredible job, I think, working on through 2 years worth of work in 2 months in order to bring this to the Parliament today, and I hope they feel very proud about the legacy they're going to be leaving in order for us to be able to get this country moving and get things done. So with that, I want to pass off to both Chris and then to Shane to talk a little bit more about the process and how it will work going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. The fast-track approvals bill we're introducing to Parliament today is based on the existing RMA fast-track regime introduced by the previous government. The difference is that our regime is far more extensive and it will be far more effective. Projects will become eligible for fast-track through one of two ways. Either through a referral by the joint decision of the Ministers of Infrastructure, Regional Development and Transport upon an application, or by being listed as a project in Schedule 2A of the bill, and I'll talk more about the schedule in a moment. Once a project's been referred into the fast-track process, it will go to an expert panel for consideration. The expert panel will look carefully at each project and apply consent and permit conditions that ensure the project does not affect existing treaty settlements and that any environmental considerations are managed appropriately. The panel will have a maximum of 6 months to do this. This is similar to the way the existing fast-track regime developed under COVID and then carried over into the current law applies. The panel will then refer the project back to joint ministers to either approve the project with the conditions or decline the project. The ministers will also have the ability to refer the project back to the panel if they consider and determine that the conditions placed on the project by the panel are too onerous. So that's one way for projects to be fast-tracked. Just want to talk briefly about Schedule 2 of the bill. There's been a bit of discussion around that. Schedule 2A of the bill will contain projects which will be automatically referred into the fast-track process once the bill passes into law. If a project is listed in Schedule 2B of the bill, so that's the second part of the schedule, 2B, they will be required to be taken into account by ministers if and when the project becomes before them for referral. So 2A are projects that are essentially ready to be consented, ready to go. They will be listed in the bill. Projects in 2B are projects that have significance, that the government will be interested in progressing, but are not quite yet ready at the consent stage. I want to be really clear that the bill that we're introducing doesn't contain any projects listed in either Schedule 2A or 2B. To ensure a thorough and transparent process, we'll be establishing a fast-track advisory group of independent experts to provide advice to ministers on what projects should be included in those schedules. So in the coming weeks, we will establish that group, publish the criteria for the projects, and applicants will be asked to submit projects to that group for evaluation. Cabinet will then take the advice of that independent panel, decide on the exact mix of projects, and then those projects will be inserted into the schedules of the bill, either through the Select Committee process or through the Committee of the Whole House process as the bill proceeds through the Parliament. The intention is that the bill will be read a first time this afternoon and sent to the Environment Committee for further consideration. I'm now going to hand over to Shane Jones to make some comments around his areas, and then I think we're taking questions.
I want everyone to bear in mind that the underlying philosophy beneath the armature of this legislation is to move from cancel economics to can-do economics. Every region in New Zealand has been blighted by the costs of acquiring consents, the length of time taken to acquire consents. This piece of legislation flows from the commitments that were entered into in our coalition agreement. I think it's an overdue fillip, and it will transform sectors including the extractive sector and also the aquaculture sector. As the Regional Development Minister, I want to see the market generating more dividends, more jobs, and hoping to create more international revenue. There will inevitably be lots of interest pertaining to the extractive sector. As the Minister, I've been mandated to work with that sector and try and generate more export-led growth outcomes. Inevitably, people will challenge whether or not certain industries should continue to exist in New Zealand or indeed be entitled to come through this process. But the extractive sector is a legitimate, genuine part of a diverse economy. On the question of aquaculture, another piece of work will be addressed dealing with extending all aquaculture permits in New Zealand to give the certainty and the investment and the jobs in regional New Zealand. On the question of treaty matters, I'll share this responsibility with Mr Bishop, but we have upheld the commitments that were entered into in relation to our coalition agreement. The existing settlements and the property rights contained in those settlements will be upheld. There will be ample opportunity for those settlement entities and other groups of Māori who may not have entered into settlements to date to participate in the processes. Their views, their perspectives will be actively sought out by the statutory decision makers. So no one should leave this meeting believing that we have either derogated or marginalised the importance or the standing that post-settlement Māori entities who expect the Crown to honour and uphold the settlements that were entered into in a full and final manner will not be addressed. They are addressed in this bill. Thank you very much.
Right, well can I just say thank you again for coming out. Can I also just acknowledge the great work again of Chris and Shane in bringing this to life. Thank you very much for the way you've worked with the officials and again the whole team that's actually supported you doing this. I know how hard you've worked over recent weeks and months to do this. With that, we're happy to take any questions.
This regime gives your ministers the power to make direct referrals and then also sign off after the expert panel. Is that too much power given the hands of three ministers?
No, we are determined in this country to get things going. The situation is completely untenable and unacceptable going forward. We need to grow this economy. A big part of that is building modern, reliable infrastructure. A major problem here in New Zealand is that we're spending $1.3 billion a year on resource consenting, and the time to get a resource consent has doubled in the last 5 years. That comes to an end, and we need to make some decisions. I said that we'll be a government that will make tough decisions, but I think we've got a good process here with informed advice from expert panels, coupled with decision making sitting with the ministers.
Do you accept that as a dramatic shift though? Do you accept that's a dramatic shift in power?
It may well be, but the point is I think we've got the checks and balances in place where there's good levels of consultation, there is appropriate expertise coming through an expert panel advising ministers, and then final decision making sitting with ministers to get things done, to get the country unblocked and to get it moving forward.
Will the ministers be able to approve some of those projects and change the conditions that the expert panels have put forward, or do they have to approve them with the conditions?
Well, there's a number of pathways. I'll let Chris Bishop talk to you more about actually to give you some reassurance about how we're going to do that under each of those pathways.
Minister,
Sorry, do you just want me to address that?
Yep.
Yes.
Just say the question again, sorry, I couldn't quite hear.
All the ministers have to, I guess, take the conditions that the expert panel puts forward, or do you have power to change those conditions?
So no, but the ministers do have the ability to refer the project back if it comes back with conditions that are too onerous. One of the things that I think many applicants have been worried about when it comes to some projects is that the conditions imposed simply make the project unviable. So it's about striking that right balance, and as the Prime Minister said, I think we've got the balance about right. Ministers refer projects to the panel. The panel imposes the conditions across the RMA and the other various statutes that we are affecting here, and then the projects come back for ministers for final approval. Ministers will have the ability to send it back to a panel to say, actually, we think you've got that wrong. You should reassess the conditions for the project.
So for the approvals, once a minister approves it, does that mean projects go ahead, or that's been approved for fast track?
It means the projects go ahead. So ministers will be essentially approving those projects, and the consents will be granted. And it's not just consents. One of the unique elements of this process is that it's a one-stop shop. So we've sent out the material, but you'll see it's the RMA processes various permits required under the Conservation Act, the Wildlife Act, the Heritage Act, the Public Works Act. The intention is that an applicant will apply. Ministers will say, that's a project of regional significance or national significance. We're sending it to a panel. The panel will then work at pace to apply the relevant conditions across the various statutes. It then comes back to ministers for approval. Once approval is granted, all of those suite of various different things that are required for a project to get up and running are granted. That's a very important element of the process.
So if it meets the conditions, once it comes back to the ministers, it's green light basically.
Correct.
Yeah, what rights will an affected party, a third party, have to appeal through the courts in this process?
So appeals on points of law only. That is the same as it is through the existing fast track in both the COVID legislation and then carried over into the law right now. So appeals to the High Court and beyond on points of law only. The bill does not affect rights of judicial review. So appeals on points of law only, and that preserves what we have right now in the law.
Can you give some examples of projects that you're considering putting into the first round of fast track?
I don't want to get ahead of the consideration by the expert panel on that. I think it's really important we run a thorough and transparent process. There's clearly a lot of interest out there, and people have made public comments from a variety of different sectors about things that they would like to see fast-tracked. What we're going to do is to make sure it's transparent, it's thorough. We take the advice, we're going to send it to an expert group that will be stood up in a matter of weeks. They will consider those projects, they will then give advice to ministers, we will then make consenting as a cabinet after that.
Characterise it as deemed to be
When
regional.
the government has a project that it wants to get consented, and the government is in charge of effectively consenting its own project.
Well, I don't see that as a conflict. I mean, that's the status quo right now. I mean, NZTA has a range of consents out there every day for various different things. I don't see that as a conflict. There'll be a range of public and private projects that go through the process, I expect, and we'll just work through that.
If the characterised track 2 is being deemed to be quite regionally or nationally significant, well, I appreciate you're not going to name the projects, but what does that mean? What's your definition of regionally or nationally significant?
So, well, it's sort of self-defining. Projects that are regionally significant in terms of job creation, economic value creation, and when it comes to a road, congestion benefits or travel time savings, productivity, nationally as things that are on a national scale. So it's sort of, in some ways, it's self-defining. 2A, the projects that are in 2A of the bill will automatically be referred. As I said earlier, those are essentially projects that consents are basically ready to go. There's applicants, when they get their projects together, have to actually think about all the different things they need to mitigate from an environmental point of view. Actually, the smarter people out there do that now. So these are projects that are essentially consent worthy or consent ready. Projects on 2B are projects that might be on a longer time frame, for which the detailed work has not yet been done, but for which there is clearly interest or appetite to advance. One of those projects is right behind us. So that gives you a bit of a sense about some of the things we're interested in.
Presumably you'll accept that some environmental groups and some interested in Māori rights will ultimately disagree with what your definition of regionally or nationally significant is, though?
Possibly, although there's been extensive engagement both with iwi and Maori groups, but also people in the environmental movement as well. The point I'd make to you is twofold. Number one, there are many iwi and many Maori groups out there that will use this fast-track procedure to advance things in their rohe, and unlock their whenua, to build jobs for New Zealanders and for iwi Maori. Second point I'd make is some of the projects that will undoubtedly be considered will be good for the environment in the sense that they will lower emissions. We need more geothermal, we need more wind. If you go out and talk to Meridian or Contact or Mercury or Mighty River, they will say to you the RMA is a massive stumbling block for new renewables. Before, when the David Parker's bill was before Parliament at the end of last year, the Wind Energy Association turned up and said the biggest stumbling block to building new wind is the RMA. Contact Energy said the single biggest barrier to the decarbonisation of the New Zealand economy is the RMA. We are cutting through the thicket of red tape and green tape to make sure we can electrify this economy and also invest in the extractive industries, which, as Minister Jones says, are a part of the New Zealand economy and provide jobs and growth in regional New Zealand every day of the week.
On that, Minister, do you have any forecasts around the possible employment growth that could come from some of the sectors or industries that may be impacted by this?
That will be worked through in due course. So when it comes to the submission to the expert panel considering the projects for 2A or 2B of the bill, that will be one of the things that the panel will take into consideration, the employment forecast, but also the wider economic benefits. So undoubtedly that will be looked at. But it's very clear, if you just do a cursory look at regional New Zealand and also our cities, frankly, as well. Major infrastructure projects are big employers, they're big generators of jobs, and they're also big generators of productivity. If you think about the Transmission Gully, the Kapiti Expressway, projects not far from here, they've been transformational for Wellington, Waikato Expressway, Puhoi, right around the country. Those major infrastructure projects are good.
I can say, if I can just respond, one private sector project, and this is public information, 12 hectares of aqua space generates $140 million per annum of income. Beyond any comparison of kiwi fruit, dairying, and I think that's a small example. This is all public information. And to the extent that aqua farming is going to come through this process, I repeat it again, it's in the aquaculture strategy that the government issued before my arrival. 12 hectares, 140 million per annum.
Can I just add that? Well, the impact on the region is going to be fantastic. I mean, it's interesting, you look at something like the Waikato Expressway, right? Look at the roads that we built there. I remember just talking to a vet over the last year and a half or so when I was up there, and she said to me, Chris, I've been able to do 1 or 2 extra jobs a day because I can jump on and off that expressway as I visit different farms, and I can get home to my 2 young girls much quicker in the evening. So we know that when we do modern, reliable infrastructure well, that has massive economic benefits, but it also has social benefits, and it also has environmental benefits. And so that's what we're doing here, and I appreciate that it's a change, but we have come to government, as I have said before, to get things done, and a big part of it and a big handbrake on New Zealand has actually been progressing the RMA. Yesterday I met with Jacinta Allen, who's the Premier of Victoria in Australia, and it was really interesting to me. Victoria is an economy probably not much larger than New Zealand, but over the last 20 years they have been doing some incredible work in infrastructure. They've learnt a lot from different projects along the way. They've had a significant investment going in. They have explored and used alternative funding and financing tools, but it has huge benefit to economic growth, particularly in regional Victoria, as we talked about yesterday. So, we know that we have some catch up to do here. We want to get straight to the front of the queue. We want to be a country that actually can balance those economic, social and environmental pieces as well. But we're going to take 6 months to make a decision here, not 6 years. Sorry, let's go to come back to Mike. Sorry?
With the direct referral powers for ministers, how are you going to make sure that there's no conflicts of interest?
Well, again, we've got a clean process here, as Chris has just outlined, and we've also got decision-making ultimately sitting with Cabinet. So I've got every confidence that actually we do need ministerial decision-making to cut through and to actually make a hard yes or a hard no. We're doing it or we're not doing it, but we can't live in the limbo land that we've had of mush and indecision. We actually have to have hard yes, hard no.
But will the ministers be able to recuse themselves if there is a conflict?
We have very good conflict of management processes within our Cabinet. We have clearly the Cabinet manual, we have the Cabinet office, and we also have internal processes in our meetings talking about conflicts as well. So I have every confidence that our ministers will act with great probity. Conflicts will be well managed, but importantly, they have an important role to make as decision makers. And I think with these 3 that I'm standing here with today, we have some very good, sound decision makers that will do a great job. Sorry, Mike, I was coming.
That six month process time, how much quicker is that in the current status quo?
Well, all I just say to you is our timing on resource consents has doubled in 5 years. The cost that people are spending is $1.3 billion a year. We are spending an inordinate amount of time and process and actually not making hard decisions about getting things done. We have to build a modern, reliable infrastructure. Our biggest challenge in this whole country for the last 30 years, and even more so in the last 6 years, has been our lack of economic productivity. It is really, really poor. And I think that'll become self-evident as you're seeing our fiscal position being unloaded. But our GDP per hour worked and as a measure of productivity is incredibly poor relative to other countries. So as we've talked before, there are 5 things we're trying to do as a government. World-class education, embrace science, technology, innovation, get rid of the red tape, have stronger international connections, and the 5th, the big thing we're talking about today is modern, reliable infrastructure. And the key thing is the Resource Management Act and fast-track consenting, coupled with new funding and financing bits. And if we can do that, I'm telling you, that's how other small advanced economies around the world have been able to get the infrastructure in place for their citizens, to get the social benefits, the environmental benefits, the economic benefits. And that's what's so exciting about today and the legislation we're about to
Prime Minister, what are we doing at the Basin today?
Well, we're here because it's always good to come here, and Chris Bishop's a cricket tragic, as you well know, and he and his father have a great tradition of coming here and watching test matches here at this great place. But also right behind us sits the Mount Vic Tunnel, and as we've been here before, we've said that's a big focus for us. We want to start construction in this term. It may well be one of the projects that ultimately we consider for this process, and so we've got a lot of work to do.
Is there a difference between complying with the treaty settlements process and complying with the Treaty of Waitangi?
Well, as you know, our government is going to continue to honour the Treaty of Waitangi. That is non-negotiable. We're not changing the treaty.
Specific to what we're talking about today, though, do you see any differences in the compliance?
No, what I'm really proud about is that there's been good levels of engagement. I appreciate there'll be a range of views and conversation, as there will be with any change, but the reality is all of our team have consulted with iwi up and down the country, as Chris alluded to before, and I've spoken with iwi who are actually saying we want to be involved in doing these projects. Actually, we want to participate in building some of this infrastructure, so this is going to help us with our projects, and we're going to make sure, as a parties that respect property rights, all treaty obligations previously committed to will be maintained and honoured, and likewise any future property rights going forward.
Is that a deliberate narrowing, though, with this specific announcement today to narrow it to just the settlement process as opposed to the treaty in general?
Well, I think what we're trying to say is that where we have, we want any reference to the treaty to be relevant to the legislation that we're actually applying to, and sometimes what we've ended up with is a very generic provision that's caused massive amounts of confusion as to what does it actually mean with respect to this particular piece of legislation. And so what we're being is very intentional to say, let's get really clear about what this means within the context of this legislation. Sometimes we've thrown in generic clauses that actually that don't actually tie to a very specific piece of legislation. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Do you have any further comment on that, Mayor?
Very similar view.
I'd direct everyone's attention to the New Zealand First Coalition Agreement. We've never once said that we're going to undermine or deprecate any settlement. In fact, the word I think was used was uphold. Look, I have to share with you, there's 50-odd references to the treaty and legislation, and in many cases they've been put in there without any thought given or an understanding of the context. In this particular case, I strongly encourage you to look at the following. Each settlement gives standing to the post-settlement entity.
That's right.
And the innards of their settlement will be respected and have justiciability in this Act. That was the expectation when the Crown entered into these settlements. The notion, however, that we should plonk a generic, unknown treaty clause in every piece of legislation is not something that we agreed to. We will uphold the settlements, and where there are treaty references, it's important that statutory decision makers know what on earth they mean. I know, ma'am, you have a question for the PM.
I have a question. Prime Minister, Jen Took here from Greenpeace. Your government's been accused of starting a war on nature, and today you've indicated that you'll be fast-tracking new mines. How do you respond to people who are calling this a radically anti-environment bill?
Oh, look, I disagree completely. What we're determined to do is actually meet our climate obligations. Net zero 2050, something all of our parties are signed up for, and our government's determined to deliver.
And how are you going to do that when you open new open-cast coal mines?
I'll get there. So what I'd say to you is, we see very clear examples where regulation is actually getting in the way of us getting renewable energy, as we've talked extensively about, in place. I think it's unacceptable. It takes 8 years to consent a wind farm and 2 years to build it. It would take 10 years to get the benefit on the environment for that. I think we can do that much quicker. As we've talked about, a year to consent it, 2 years to build it, we get the benefit in 3 years. With respect to mining, we have a process in place. We're not talking about mining on national parks. There's quality of land, but we are going to do some mining because it doesn't make sense to shift gravel, for example, when we're trying to build infrastructure and roads from one part of the country to another part, driving greenhouse gas emissions up. If it makes sense to do it locally, we'll do it locally. luckily.
Yep.
Minister Jones,
Last few minutes, guys.
Not that shame.
in fact, Greenpeace brought some effluent to the steps of Parliament today
Right.
in opposition to all of this fast tracking.
Yeah.
What's your response to that?
Oh, look, I understand there's theatre always where the economy interacts with the environment, and it's just part of political entertainment. I'm an old soldier, it bothers me not one iota.
Is it
Mr.
correct
Luxon.
to categorise it those
Sorry,
theatre
Mikey.
as a legit-
Sorry?
Is it correct for you to categorise it as theatre, given the significant concerns that people do hold?
Now, people will have an opportunity to go to the Select Committee and reflect their concerns. That's how democracy works. But this is one politician. You are not going to guilt trip over any narrative that treats climate change as the only environmental issue that our government has to deal with.
Hang on, guys. We'll just go. I'll get you a promise. Yeah.
When Sir Robert Muldoon tried to introduce almost identical legislation in 1979, he split the National Party. MPs voted against it. How are you going to hold your party together?
No disrespect, but I was 8. But I'll just say to you, complete irrelevance. There is no issue in our caucus whatsoever. Our caucus is we came here to get things done. This country needs a deep turnaround. All of our parties are united on that. All of our caucuses are united on that. We are here to get things done. We think this is common sense, pragmatic. This is what happened. There are 195 countries in the world. Many of them have very similar processes. That's what's actually been frustrating a lot of investment from coming into New Zealand. It's partly why we're the second worst in the OECD behind Mexico in welcoming foreign direct investment, because the process is just too hard. We need that capital. We want to get infrastructure built. We have a massive infrastructure deficit. That will not be a problem, Richard. Do not worry about
So
that.
supporters may say, your membership may say today, yeah, we like the bill, until Transpower come along and want to build a big power pylon.
Look, you're living in the 70s. I'm telling you, we've moved on.
100 days tomorrow.
100 days? Yes, sorry, Mikey.
How would you surmise the first 100 days for your government on the eve of this?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's been fantastic, really. I mean, we came here and we said, we told you what we're going to do. We've done it, and now we're telling you what we've done. And I look at this example. We've said we've got to get things built. We're not going to be an obstruction economy anymore. As I keep saying, the work of particularly Chris and Shane has been outstanding with the teams that have done it. I think they've done 2 years worth of work in 2 months, and it just proves again and again that we can do this in this country.
There have been a few bumps in the road in these 100 days.
I wouldn't say that way at all. I think we've done a lot. I think we've got everything done. Sorry?
What do you consider left to do 100 days? On the 100 days, what do you
Sorry, can I go to Joe Moore?
carry that on from Mikey?
Yeah.
What do you consider left to do other than meeting the health targets and the build to rent obligations? Is there anything you still...
No, we'll have all actions completed by the end of the play this week, which is exactly where we want to be. And then we're in the process of actually thinking through what's our Q2 set of actions that we'll be working towards. And ultimately we'll do that for Q3 and Q4 as well.
Are there any outside of those two, though, that are still on your list?
No, everything that has the 49 actions that we talked about in the 100-day plan will be completed within the 100 days. And I think again, it just demonstrates what's possible, right? It demonstrates what's possible when you're actually a government that's clear about its priorities. We're here to rebuild the economy, restore law and order, deliver better health and education. When you see things like, we jammed in the mobile phone ban, we jammed in an hour of maths, an hour of reading, an hour of writing. Go talk to the parents, go talk to the principals, go talk to the kids, even just on the phone ban, for example. Really good. Think about, we talked about for years the problems that we've had with nurses being abused in emergency departments. Done. Quick conversation in Cabinet, 3 parties agree, yep, let's go do that, get that sorted. Lo and behold, we get the security in place, halve the number of incidents. So we can keep talking about things in this country, or we start doing things, and we're determined to do things.
Last question, guys, we're out of time.
Sorry, so I go to Bridie. Oh, no, come back.
So, Prime Minister, you hosted your family at Premier House for Christmas. Did you all stay the night?
Yes, I think we declared we were there 1 or 2 nights. Some of us, yeah.
Was there any other time? Was there any other time your family stayed the night there?
No.
And why was it okay to spend the night there then, and it's not okay to live in now?
Well, what we're doing is, as I said to you, we want to be able to live in Premier House. It's really important that we can. You know that there's been long-standing issues with respect to the repairs and maintenance needed there. At the moment, in the months that have actually been in this year, there's actually some minor repairs and maintenance taking place. It means I can't go and move into there at this point. That is the intention. That's what we want to be able to do. More importantly, I want that asset being used daily. I want it to be used daily. We've had very few, for example, functions in the bottom of Premier House, which is actually not ideal, but we can make that work, and we can do some things that I think that can make that work. We've already opened it up to the agriculture sector to think about how they do innovation. They had a great brainstorming day there a couple of weeks ago. I want more of that. I want the community using the place. I want that to be Grand Central Station. That's why I brought the cricket teams there. I want it to be used, and that's what we're going to do. But what I just say to you is, you've seen what's happening when you've had governments that actually haven't faced up to decisions. We have issues with planes, we have issues with Premier House, we have issues with roads, and it's deferred decision making and deferred investment. So we're finding a way through that.
What renovations? What renovations are happening at the moment at Premier House? You mentioned minor renovations.
Yeah, just minor renovations. There's a bit of updating needed, and they're just doing it, but it's very, very minor.
What are your reflections on ASEAN?
Oh, look, it was fantastic. I mean, we had it was a really powerful and a really successful 24 hours in Australia. I got to meet with every single leader of ASEAN, and we now have a program for the rest of the year where we'll be travelling quite extensively to some of these key markets in Southeast Asia. For me, I've got a major priority as we reset our foreign affairs agenda, which is really to say, we want to make sure we have a strong relationship with Australia, that we can do more together on security, defence and intelligence. We can do an awful lot more together around working together in the Pacific. And the third thing is that we really want to re-engage the single economic market and make sure that we're getting, as we look at future things around AI, technology, the green economy, actually how we can work together. You've already seen me put in place 2+2 meetings with respect to foreign affairs and defence, but also finance caught up, and we'll have climate change meeting together as well. And we'll plug that into the state operation as much as the federal operation. So job one is Australia, job two is Southeast Asia.
Was it embarrassing when the Prime Minister of Australia asked you if you swam across the ditch to get there?
No. Look, he and I know each other well from our previous lives, and I just say to you, it's all good.
David Seymour made some comments this morning directly on the reporting of a TVNZ journalist. Is that appropriate for a minister who has some role overseeing TVNZ?
Well, look, what I want to say on TVNZ is it's incredibly unsettling, and I do genuinely feel for the staff, and some of them will be here today, because clearly all media companies here and around the world are wrestling with a changing media environment.
But were those appropriate comments from David Seymour?
Well, I didn't see the comments, but what I just say to you is that what I'd say to you is it is unsettling, and importantly, we recognise that it's a tough day for people from TVNZ.
Should he, as a minister that has some role overseeing TVNZ, be commenting?
All I just say to you is I think politicians have, of all parties, probably think they get unfair treatment from the media, but the bottom line is you play a very important role in our democracy. Again, I haven't seen the comments. Just say to you, it's about the TVN.
Is that appropriate for David Seymour?
I just say to you, it's TVNZ. We feel for the staff that have been affected. We know how discombobulated that.
Will there be any help coming?
No. As we've said before, we understand the media environment is tough and challenging for people. We understand that there are fundamental long-term structural changes in media across the world. Media companies are having to wrestle and innovate to dream up new business models as things go increasingly digital.
A vibrant economy will be good for the media.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
You're not willing to say if David Seymour's comments were appropriate?
Look, again, I'm not going to get into that. Today is a day when actually, if you're sitting at TVNZ and you've heard that news, it's incredibly discombobulating and unsettling for people. And I think that's where we need to be today. The media play an important role in New Zealand, a very important role in our democracy. And I know it's incredibly challenging for the whole of the sector. It is really difficult. And it is because you've got underlying changes in consumer habits and demands and consumption patterns. You've got business models that are having to be reinvented along the way. And as a result, we know it's a really difficult time. Yeah. Cool. Thank you, team. Appreciate it.